everyone. Welcome to this week's Fireside Creators. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sherry Palace. This week's show is a Wild Goose Festival recap, and we have an absolute amazing panel for the show. If you are watching on YouTube, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. If you are on Facebook, please register with StreamYard so we can see your comments and questions and know who we're talking to. Unless, of course, you want to stay anonymous. Please keep all comments and questions on topic, and remember that this is a safe space. I want to give a shout out to our top sponsors, Ruth, Ray, Michelle, Kirsten, Heidi. You guys rock. Thank you so much for continuing to support the show. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting it. I've started a Patreon, and there is my website. You can go on and get some of my shirts and just support it for like $3 a month. I appreciate it. But most importantly, I appreciate you allowing me and my guests into your home and giving us a chance to speak and for you to learn. Okay, enough housekeeping. Actually, there's one more thing. I gave away these bracelets at Wild Goose. It says, "Love is my religion, peace is my intention." I ran out. I do have a few left that I found laying around my house. So if you want one, go ahead, email me, and I will mail you one. Okay, let's meet the panel. First, we have Reverend Greg Larson. He was born and baptized, confirmed, and ordained in the United Church of Christ. He is a trained intentional intern, former police chaplain, church growth, and church crisis pastor. Remove that. The first and only to his knowledge, Space Force chaplain, at least his Instagram says so. Welcome, Greg. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on tonight, Sherry.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. Hey, David, how are you? Okay, next we have Tim Kerr. He's newly retired after 40 years in the automotive service and parts industry. He is a husband, father, grandfather, and an all-around fun guy. To this I can attest. Tim is also the Wild Goose Partner Relations and Wings Coordinator, connecting sponsors and individual donors. He likes long walks on the beach and puppies, and I, of course, had to include that. You can't give me that information and not let me include it. Welcome, Tim. Thanks so much for being here.
All right. Thanks for getting me out, right?
It proves you're an all-around fun guy, right?
That's right.
And last but definitely not least, we have Danae Castile. She was raised in a fundamental evangelical Christianity. She is a preacher's kid and spent several years in the ministry. Danae now works with people in all stages of deconstruction towards their spiritual health and wholeness, whatever that means for them. There we go. Welcome, Danae.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming. Okay, so I am still completely exhausted from the goose. I can only imagine how you guys are feeling. I got there at like 3:30 on Wednesday, started walking around. By like 3:32, I felt like Giuliani with his hair dye, with my makeup down my face, my skin sweating off. I had to stop, throw up my hair, and be like, I'm dying. So I'm getting that early. That is my only complaint. I did ask Tim to address the heat next year, but he said he has no power over that. When did you guys get there, and what did you think when you first got there? Greg, we'll start with you.
I got there a couple days early before the goose starts, just because I like a couple days to decompress from my regular work.
Yeah.
I drove down from Auburn Hills, where I live, just northern suburb of Detroit, and just needed that time to kind of rest and relax for a little bit, and that gives me a time to catch up with Tim and everybody around our campsite and relax and let the goose start. So yeah, I got there Tuesday afternoon, and you're right, Sherry. One step out of the RV, and it was like walking into a pool of sweat.
I felt like I had a fur coat on.
Yeah.
Danae, when did you get there? What did you first think getting there this year?
So I didn't get there.
Oh, was it Danae? I'm sorry.
That's okay, Tim.
So I got there Thursday afternoon, probably with a lot of the other participants. And I had just moved last weekend. So I had one day between finishing moving, and all my travels on Wednesday and Thursday. And before that, I had my kids for 2 weeks. So I came to the Goose tired. Also came very much needing the revitalization that the Goose gives. And so it definitely was hotter this year. It felt like I was dripping so much. I'm like, am I in a shower?
I know.
At the moment, but I really enjoyed seeing how much more wide open it is, and so my first, and last year was my first Goose, so I only have one experience at Hot Springs, and so but just my first hour or so at the Goose was all about what's different, what does it look like this year. Yeah, it was great.
Tim, what about you?
All right, so Jan, my wife, and I, we arrived Sunday. We before, this is my first year on staff. I didn't need to be that early, but we over the years get a day earlier, as Greg says, get a chance to be there and kind of see the festival start to take shape, which is a lot of fun. As you can well attest, we have a pretty extravagant campsite that takes a few days to set up, so it's nice to be able to ease into that. And then as folks arrive, you can kind of have some time, like Greg said, you get a little time to visit before the chaos. So I sort of us all buying trees and planting them. I'm not sure what our options are on these, but I'm all for that. We can take up a tree fund maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I raced to get there, and then as soon as I got there, I wanted to split myself into 5 different people.
Right.
It was kind of like an ADD nightmare because there were so many things I wanted to see. There were so many people I wanted to talk to, and meet and see them speak. And I think it was Saturday when I went, okay, I haven't been present in days. I have been running around saying hi and then running away. And it was like, okay, I need to breathe and become present and really just enjoy this show as opposed to trying to take every bit of it in. It was a lot. The festival opened with Reverend William Barber, and I went total fangirl, first of all. Total fangirl. At one point, he started speaking and he called us to action. He told us that this was our time. He laid out exactly what we needed to do. And I couldn't stop the tears from flowing. It was so powerful. Tim, we'll start with you this time. What did you think?
Well, Reverend Barber like you say, you'll find as the years go by at the Goose, you don't get jaded, you don't get cynical, but I've read everything Brian McLean's written. I've heard him speak just past Memorial Day. So you're like, okay, I don't have to do that. I tell everybody, Reverend Barber, no options. You've got to go see Reverend Barber. And it's just that. He's our version of Martin Luther King, in my opinion. He's that powerful. His message resonates that much. And it's a call to action. It's really as important as Diana Butler Bass's message was on Sunday. Reverend Barber is a Sunday speaker. He sends you out of there ready to go conquer the world, So I'm not sure they shouldn't have flip-flopped that.
Yeah, I based my whole trip around seeing him.
Right.
That's how fangirl I got. I was so honored to have been able to take a picture with him. Danae, what did you think?
So I have been a social justice activist for several years now. And so he and I run in similar circles, like in DC, but I have never actually been at a protest with him. He was arrested a week or two before the Goose, right? For protesting for reproductive rights in DC. And I just remember seeing the picture of him going, I'm going to see you in a couple of weeks. So I kind of fangirl from him more from that world than I guess the religious and spirituality world. But the opportunity to hear him speak in person was a dream come true. And maybe someday I'll actually get to be next to him. We can, share the same paddy wagon or something. But
there you go. Oh my God, I would love to get arrested with him. I don't know that I've ever said that before, but I totally would.
Oh, you become very close to the people you get arrested with.
Yeah.
I have a few experiences. He's not one of them yet.
I know. Life goals. Greg, I saw you before and after, and I know that you were kind of just like me. What did you think?
I first heard Reverend Barber on a march in Washington, D.C. Quite a few years ago. And of course, before that, watched him as he was gaining notoriety for the Moral Monday movements and the steps of the North Carolina Capitol. From there, I heard him speak in Flint, Michigan. He came up to talk about the Flint water crisis. He was supporting the Fight for 15 here in the state of Michigan, which was all about getting minimum wage to a living wage here. So I'm always amazed and inspired more so with Reverend Barber. Just when I think I know what he's going to say, or I'm going to assume what he's going to say, his words smack me right across the face, and it's probably a good thing. Listening to him is very healthy for my privileged whiteness.
Definitely.
And his words are always words that I know I need to hear and respond to. Just as Tim mentioned, his preaching is always a call to action, and
it really was.
That's really what I was moved about on that first night, Thursday night, when he was there with us.
Yeah, I felt like a teenager again, asking the guard if I could go backstage. And I hadn't lost it because he let me, so I was able to score this picture with him. And at that point, the festival was made. Anything could have happened after that, and it would have been the best festival I've ever been to.
So do you know the beauty of us postmodern, progressive, deconstructed, spiritual but not religious? Reverend Barber gave an altar call, and a bunch of people got saved to social justice that night. Did you, Greg, I think you went down and answered that call, didn't you?
Yeah, I sure did.
My wife, Jan, did. A lot. I mean, but that was a true altar call. That, hey, if you're gonna say you're following the Prince of Peace, you gotta work for peace. You gotta work for justice.
I ran down there.
There you go. I don't think you and I had met in real life yet.
Yeah, we hadn't.
Yeah, so I didn't see you running, but I believe you.
Yeah, and at one point he said the church was founded on trouble, and I shouted, "Good trouble!" And
just like our John Lewis.
Yeah, and he said, "My sister just said," and I'm like, oh. So yeah, it was. I mean, even when he started talking about sin, the whole audience went completely silent. And I really got that because a lot of us, leaving the church and those types of things struggle with that concept. Mm-hmm. But when he called out what was true sin, injustice, immorality in our government, quest for power, all of those types of things, I mean, people were standing up going, yes, that is the sin. At one point, I'm like, yes, because, that is who we must hold accountable. We must hold, truth to power in order to make these changes and not lose all the rights that we've gained over all of these years.
You remember when the reporter asked him about some high-level senator or something, he said, well, he's a sinner. And he's like, well, you can't call him that. He said, well, I just did.
Yeah, if he stands by with all the injustices, that is the sin. I'm all for that. Danae, what was your favorite part?
One of my favorite parts was when he said, and this is the quote I put on my own Instagram, was that he said, it's a revolutionary thing to be truthful and to speak truth in an age of lies. And I thought, yeah, it does. And many years ago, I was very apolitical until Ferguson, and until we started to see how systemic police brutality was on television, on mainstream television. Until I became more aware of it through that, I was very apolitical. And I was the kind of person who was very adamant that my social media was for my social life and was not a place to air controversy. But that really was a catalyst for change for me. And of course, then everything that's happened since then, right? So many lives lost to police brutality and to systemic racism. But then also all the other issues we've had. And then the 2016 election and how that created a resurgence of bravery to be more overtly bigoted and racist. And so all those things led me to become political for the first time in my life, and to start putting stuff like that on my social media, to start saying it in person. And I risked a lot of positions for that, ministry positions. And was I still gonna be allowed to volunteer at the Christian camp I'd gone to for 20 years? And was I still gonna be allowed to work with such and such teenagers in a spiritual context? And not to mention friends and family, right? And, I've never regretted it. And now I don't really look at that as something quite as revolutionary because it's sort of my everyday. Yeah. But I look at back who I was maybe 5-6 years ago and go, that took a lot of courage for that kid, that took a lot of courage for me to say, I'm going to completely change all of my these are my rules for how I live my life. And I'm going to start speaking out. And it still causes some problems, in my life, but they're lesser now because most people expect it from me. But that really hit me because it's changed my life, just my one little life. And I always call myself an accidental activist. I kind of fell into it accidentally, and it just snowballed from there. But if it changed my one little life, if speaking truth in an age of lies changes just me, how could it change everybody else and everything else? Like I've seen a profound impact in my own life. What could it do if we all did it?
Yeah, I have just assumed for like the last few years that most people have muted me or unfollowed me or something, and then I post something and it gets a few hundred views. I'm like, oh my God, you guys are listening. I know people haven't hit me from everywhere.
Well, and I have had former students come out of the woodwork and be like, oh my goodness, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool, we still connect here. And I'm like, I used to be your fundamentalist evangelical youth minister, but. Yeah.
Real quick,
go ahead,
David. We were talking about John Lewis. That's who we were talking about in good trouble. I think there might be a miscommunication there. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, what you say? You were an accidental activist. I think it was that the word. Yeah. And I think most of us really are. Now that's one thing that where being a typical old white guy, I don't have to be an activist because most of the time I'm not being oppressed or whatever, but Jan and we have friends of ours whose children, our son's 36 or whatever, children that were born same time as them, we babysit each other's kids. That as these young ladies got a little older, they realized they were lesbian, and we became accidental activists because someone we loved and cared for on Thursday. Now on Friday, we were supposed to say, well, you're an abomination, you're going to hell. Mm-hmm. And so that most of us become accidental activists because of something like that. You see Ferguson, you see somebody being unkind to a trans person, and you're like, yeah, that's not good. I'm not going to do that. So
George Floyd got a lot of people out on the streets doing that.
Yeah. And I think that I was apolitical for so long because of my privilege, right? Whoever was president didn't affect my life in the least. And then I came around to realizing, but it does affect other people's lives.
And now it affects your life.
Well, as a Christian, aren't I supposed to be using any privilege I do have on the behalf of those who don't have it?
Yep.
You know, should I use my voice and my platform and my resources to help those who don't have the ability to do that? So yeah, that was really, I used to be very proud of being apolitical, and now I look back and go, oh.
As a woman who was president, directly affects you now.
Yes.
Talking to the Supreme Court justices that president was able to ramrod through. You know, we have to be careful. Like you say, privilege can be, if we have it, it can be taken away.
It can.
So it's we have to be ready to fight.
Yeah.
Greg, what were your thoughts on Barber?
Always striking. Always striking. You know, when we're talking about the idea of accidental activists, I think part of that is kind of being shaken to realize, oh, hey, look, I'm still in touch with my own sense of compassion and empathy. And as a person of privilege, we can easily lose that and lose sight of that, because life is, if you're straight, white, and predominantly male, pretty darn easy. And we've got activists for, you know, Tim and I have all kinds of activists that we don't want, where other people need them. And so listening to Barber's message, especially the part about calling out sin, was striking. You know, I grew up in a United Church of Christ, and our tradition is one, particularly in Michigan, where I grew up, where altar calls were never happening in our church. That just wasn't something that happened. I remember going to a evangelical church, I think in my late teens, and experiencing one, and just felt so incredibly awkward and out of place. But at the Goose, when Reverend Barber called us down, it was a shaking from my complacency, a shaking out of any sense of apathy that I'm still clinging to, into recognizing compassion and empathy for my diverse sisters and brothers around me, because it's needed, and a person in my position can't do that. I currently serve a church right now in a rural part of Michigan that kind of clings to its conservative values. It claims progressive identity, but really can't live into it. It really needs to address this from person to person on an individual basis. This idea of, do you have any compassion and empathy for people of color, or are you just putting on the blinders just to see what's right in front of your face and call that good? Because that's what I think people are doing right now, just like saying, this is what I look at in the mirror and it's good, and it's hard to push through that. That was I didn't grow up in a rural area, but in my suburban church, we were predominantly white, and I still found a way to break out of that. So being called and reminded, I think, is something that I always need, and Reverend Barber sure did that on Thursday night.
Well, and it wasn't, so I grew up in the First Assemblies of God and the evangelicals and the vineyards and all of that. And there were altar calls every weekend. But this wasn't an altar call for your salvation. This wasn't an altar call for, let me pray for you. This was a, come to the altar if you're actually going to step up and do fucking something.
Amen.
As opposed to sitting in your seats, you come down here to take your first step into making a difference. And that's why I ran. I mean, if it was going to be a, come save your soul, let me pray for you that God will forgive you, I would have sat in my seat and gone to silence, as everyone got when he asked about sin. But when he said, take that first step, it was like, I'm here, let's do this. And so many did, that floor was packed. So we all got the same message.
Yeah.
So one of the highlights of my experience was hanging with Greg and Tim and Tooth and his wife, Emily. It was awesome to finally meet everybody and be able, and I got to meet Danae on Saturday. But Tim, I want you to talk about how you said it was the best day of your life.
No, that's
Do it.
I hate to stir up more stuff because, believe it or not, there's more coming out of that. So I found that out on the 7-hour ride home, but that's
dear.
always fun. So being the partner representative is basically for sponsors of the Goose, and this is my first year of doing it. So most of them are repeat partners. There's no selling involved. They're like, hey, we want to be there. You know, the demographic fits us, whether it's a seminary or a book publisher or this and that, and different levels of sponsorship. And so probably 90% of them were returning partners. I didn't have that time really to go out and beat the bushes. So, you know, blow them in, yada, yada, yada. Well, Heidi Gardner is an incredible woman that does a lot of social media for us. So we had a spreadsheet, and it's like part of their deal for being a partner, they get shout outs on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it may be. So being the logical person she is, she just does them in alphabetical order. Well, the C's happen to be Consistent Life Network, who I've never heard of, and they were a returning partner. I didn't know I needed to vet people. I do know that now. They're a Catholic organization that is pro-life, room to change. They're as adamant against the death penalty as they are against abortion, which is the Catholic stance. That the C's came out like the day after Roe, literally the day after Roe. So folks that knew about them or either just said, oh, these people sponsor the Goose and I love the Goose, let me go check their website. And they're like, yeah, what? Are you kidding me? So my emails with, you know, my wife and I have been fortunate to have been to all the Gooses. We have a ton of relations there. So people start blowing up my email, part of the other leadership group's email. So we're like, okay, come, you know, call a meeting quickly here. We're like, okay, this is at this time, this is probably not good. Craft an email, send it to them. Like, you know what? Let's do this another time. And you think that would be that, but it was not. So, you know, they ended up going deeper and got to the board and yada, yada, yada. So anyhow, on Saturday, a religion news service article that was horrific dropped, and I got named, you know, in it and everything, which was my first experience of being named on something, you know, fighting for good things. So I was all excited. Everybody's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I said, I'm printing it out and framing it. I'm like, I'm cool. That's going on the living room wall of my wife. But the biggest thing that happened on Saturday, we all get, if you're on staff or if you're a volunteer lead, you get a golf cart, which, as this new festival site showed, a golf cart's a good thing to have, right? It's a lot of walking. I realized on Saturday that my golf cart had a horn. So it became so you know, so that's
you were, you know, the horn tops your name being dropped for women's rights.
Neck and neck.
But you had a horn.
But I had a horn.
Honk like a goose.
It does. It honks like a goose. I mean, I was like, oh my God, look at that red button. To the detriment of a lot of other people, I had a horn.
Tim saved my ass every single day. He found me walking in and gave me a ride. At one point, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to pass out. I was walking with Danae, and all of a sudden, Tim rides by.
The Goose does that. It just like, oh, hey, doesn't it, Greg? It just always does that. You're like, oh, you know, I haven't, other than Cody, with you and Cody, but it's usually, you know, I haven't really used X, Y, or Z. Bloom, it's like it drops out of the sky. You're like, oh,
yeah.
Good to see you. But yeah, that's just magic. That's Goose magic. It's just, that's what it is.
Well, I salute you for standing up for women's rights against that organization amidst all the pressure and social media that's going on about it. Thank you for doing so.
You're more than welcome.
And your horn is cool as shit.
I know.
Greg, what was your high point of the entire festival?
You know, the highest point of the festival for me is listening to everybody. I think I've got some of the best conversations with just sitting around people at camp.
Yeah.
Offering, getting an opportunity to meet you and offer hospitality. That's
Awesome.
kind of what I live for, those kind of things. And of course, being musically inclined, I always look forward to our evening beer and hymns gatherings. And this year, as Tim mentioned, we reframed everything last year at Hot Springs. It was a space that we were used to. This is my fourth Goose, by the way, first one in a different location. So the three previous ones, we had this giant tent to play in, and I know that our attendance was a little bit down this year too. So previous years we had, these massive crowds. That the first year I played, Chad and Kristen, who led beer and hymns. They do Orange County beer and hymns in the LA area. They graciously allowed me to play along and be a rhythm guitarist with them. And of course, the biggest part of that whole weekend was the Saturday night gig, our last night for beer and hymns, because we just got done watching Amy Grant play on the main stage, and she came, picked up my guitar off of Chad's shoulders and played El Shaddai for the rest of us. And then, of course, the next morning I asked her to sign that guitar. It's hanging on my wall in my bedroom. So there are events like that, but there's nothing like singing some of these older gospel hymns. And I just play, sometimes drop out and just listen to the crowd do these harmonies that normally you wouldn't hear in the life of the church, where like 50, 60, 70 people gather. When there's 500 people there singing at the top of their lungs, it's always tingling. I get goosebumps, and that's kind of my emotional drive. I always do enjoy the speakers, though, and supporting my friends like Toof, who spoke too, and participating with him and doing drum circles and listening to everybody from.
Truly my favorite. I mean, besides Barber,
Yeah,
were truly one of my favorite things. It was so powerful to see between 20 and 40 strangers trying to speak to each other through rhythm and music and the communication, and then joining in with everybody. And I mean, you can't get three people to work together like that, and the drums brought everybody together to do so. It was so powerful. I thank you so much for doing so.
Oh, I'm just glad to do that. I learned a long time ago as a drummer. I grew up playing the drums. That you can't have rhythm without the silence in between the beats. And so silence in between is intentional. So that's kind of how I look at my time at the Goose. If I'm going to stay in rhythm with the rest of the world as it moves and evolves around me, I have to stay silent and let my voice quiet and listen. And so that's really what I get out of it, listening to all the authors that show up, the Moonshine Jesus show, and Mark Sandlin out of North Carolina, who started the God. Yep, there it is. Who started the God article page. I met him for the first time in person, but we've been communicating through social media for ages. So it's just that kind of stuff that I live for. The Goose is always a good, albeit brief, moment for recharge.
I didn't want to leave. Danae, what was your favorite part?
I loved last year's my first Goose, and I loved it. And I had this inkling last year and I told Tim this story. I went to the same Bible camp for 22 years straight. I went as a teenager, and then as soon as I was old enough to be staff, I was staff. I have taught and counseled hundreds of teens across the years through this experience, and it used to be the centerpiece of my year. And it was the most sacred time and most sacred place of my life and my year. And I can't overstate that. And then a few years ago, I stopped going for various reasons, and I have not gone back because I've deconstructed enough that I can't be staff there anymore. I can't participate the same way in a lot of ways because I would not be safe for them from their perspective of what safe is. And so it's no longer beneficial for me to go there. And I have finally made my peace with that the last couple of years. So when I went to the Goose last year, I was just looking forward to it. I'd wanted to go for many years, but I'd been in the Midwest for 10 years and never had the chance to go. Finally came back Southeast. I get to go. I was not expecting to experience what I did, but especially communion on Sunday, just seeing queer folks and, young folks and people who are probably Jews and Christians and people who don't know what we are, and every age all coming together in the way that communion was framed last year was very much, like no one cares what you believe or who you are or what you look like. There's space at the table for you. And that was just a really moving moment for me. And I got this inkling that I think the Goose could be my next experience of camp. So I came back this year, and my experience last year was like your Sherry, where it was like, oh my goodness, there's 3 things I want to go to every single hour. What do I choose? Right. And every single hour I had it stacked. Right.
Exactly.
And so it was just constant choosing. And this year I looked at the schedule and I was like, there's just not as much that appeals to me.
Oh, wow.
It resonates with me. Like, I'm going to go to that because it's my friend's session. I'm going to go to that because it's my friend's session. I'm going to help at that one. I did 3 sessions myself, but I just wasn't as, and the topics change every year, and that's fine. And I had this fear before I came. I said, what if I've deconstructed too much that the Goose isn't for me anymore? And so then I come, and my experience was the opposite. And so my highlight was, as much as I enjoyed, loved, Reverend Dr. Barber, and as much as I loved teaching so much. So getting to do my own sessions was so fun. But after my session on Saturday, my last one, like I said, I had my kids for 2 weeks, and then I moved, and then I came to the Goose and I had 3 sessions. So after my last session on Saturday, it was like, oh my gosh, I can rest. There is nothing urgent on my to-do list right now for the next few days.
I grabbed you and said, let's go.
I know. And so I was like, well, what am I going to do? I can actually just enjoy the rest of the Goose and just rest and chill. And so, so I messaged Sherry and was like, she'd come by my talk and said, hey, I just want to finally meet you in person. And so the cool thing is, and I love this is the Goose magic you're talking about, Tim, but Sherry and I met through a mutual friend on Facebook who neither one of us know in person, but he just happened to see that I was going to Wild Goose. And he said, I know somebody else is going to Wild Goose. Tagged Sherry. So we became friends. So she came by my talk just to say hi. And so we should catch up sometime. Well, I thought like an hour or 2 later, I'm laying in my camper trying to cool off. I'm like, we should actually do that rather than just say it. So I messaged her. I said, where are you at? And she said, I'm at the drum circle. Come on over. And I said, okay. And that became this little like snowball where then I met Greg and Toof, and I got to, then, we were walking to the campgrounds. She was like, after the drum circle, she's like, come on with us. And we run into Tim on the golf cart, and the whole and then, Tim's like, you're in now. And I was like, I'll tell everybody to blame you. And so, but then I get to meet all these incredible people, and guys, I have not laughed as much and as hard as I did Saturday night in a long, long time.
Wow.
It was just a funny group of people and just that beautiful synergistic community. And we talked about serious things and fun philosophical things and goofy things. And it was just the perfect gamut of all things human connection, right? And then Tim told me that y'all oftentimes stay Sunday night and have your little smaller group debrief. And in that moment, I went, that's what we do after camp. That was my favorite part of camp, was when me and all my closest friends finished cleaning up camp and passed the keys on to the next week's director. And we all went to someone's house and just hung out and shared our highlights of the week. And Tim was saying, we just want to talk about, how was your Goose?
Yeah.
And I said, you just spoke to my heart. And so that was the moment when I knew this is my sacred, safe community. This is the new centerpiece. Right here, right? And I had this inkling that it was last year, and then I was worried that it wasn't this year, and then it was. And it's always because of one thing. It's always because of people.
Oh yeah.
So getting to run into you, and then into Tim, and then the whole group, and I went, I found people.
Yes.
And that was my highlight. Yeah.
So Sherry, if I could say real quick, so on later Saturday night, one of the neat things that I was telling folks about, Greg, they made it back from beer and hymns, and we're hanging out. and people, you have we're going to have midnight moonshine mass, and everybody ha ha ha. Well, there was a gentleman that was camping there with us, him and his wife, Farmer John. I mean, he overalls guy, my age-ish or whatever, very, very, reserved dude. He's like, well, I'd like to do it. Well, we go in, Greg, myself, Jan, I think Sarah, Farmer John, 1 o'clock in the morning probably, and we've got some, how they sell all this junk moonshine now in the bottles or whatever. Purple, I think it was purple, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we had some lemon crackers, and so he's kind of like, okay, these guys really shouldn't be making fun of him. Well, Greg called us. The switch flipped. We had communion, did we not? I mean, again, goosebumps. It went from to boom. I mean, just that we'd all been up all day, we'd been drinking, carrying on. All of a sudden, it's like the Holy Spirit drops. You're drinking moonshine and eating lemon crackers. It is the body and blood of Christ. Thank you for doing that, by the way. So that's
awesome. Yeah, when you took me to my car, when you shuttled me to my car, you guys were like, "Oh, let's go do the midnight mass moonshine." So yeah, that's awesome that you got what you got.
So Jan was wondering that today. She said, I think we took her to her car. She said, I did. I said, maybe I did. So was I driving golf cart?
You said you have to go right now. You said, Sherry, you have to go right now, or I can't take you.
Okay, well that's good.
So that's why I couldn't say goodbye to Greg. That's why I was like, okay, let's go.
That little road to the parking lot, it looks a lot different when it's real dark. It's pretty shaky out there.
Yeah.
Well, and the beautiful thing, Sherry, is that I never feel compelled to say goodbye. I do say goodbye to a lot of my friends, but the good thing is that after my first goose, this is family, so I know I'm coming back.
Right.
So you don't have to say goodbye, Sherry, because I know I'm going to see you next year.
Exactly. And I do have to say, at one point, I was so hot that I'm like trying to get up into Greg's motorhome, and I finally get the door open, and the cool air hits me, and I walk over, and I just fall spread eagle on the couch. Not even seeing Greg is standing right there. I'm grunting. I'm like, and we just fell out laughing. So yes, Greg saved my life in the hospital. I mean, the hospitality was just, you guys welcomed me and instantly made me feel like family. It was just so beautiful.
Yeah. I was only there for one night, and y'all made me feel that way.
Yeah, it was incredible.
If Tim and Jan have any magic, that's their magic right there, is that the second you come in, you're part of family. You can say hi, be greeted.
Not just Tim and Jan,
you're there.
But that's the deal is, I think, when it started with us, but it's grown now, Greg, and two, everybody takes it on themselves. Like, if we're part of this group, it's going to be a welcoming group.
You guys were. I mean,
that's what. So awesome. We went from 2 to probably 25, Greg, on at least in our between RVs, motorhomes.
Oh yeah.
Tents, and everybody knows the deal that it's if you're like Cody said, it's the slippery slope. This is the urban slippery slope. It could be messy, noisy, nasty. This is not slippery slope acres out in the suburbs. Okay, this is not a gated community. It's all are welcome.
And that makes the festival, though, the community, the sitting around having drinks and shots, and I got one in the Wild Goose communion cups.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And then Tim, since you don't remember taking me to my car, you also gave me one of these.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So now I am like, I got a whole new wardrobe of social justice shirts. So,
I have shirt.
What was that, Danae?
I have that same shirt.
Yeah. Well, you saw I bought out the place.
I know. She was walking around shopping. I go, I have that one and that one.
Yeah. I've got 7 weeks worth of shows now that I can wear into different shirt.
Right. And probably 7 weeks worth of contributors, I would assume, right?
Yeah, hopefully. So the next question I have for you guys, and I'll start with, what did you get out of it the most? For me, it was two things. One was the importance of seeing God in feminine form. I heard that a lot across the festival, and especially as I'm going through the editing process with my book. There's a section in my book where I have all of my disclaimers, and I actually say, look, I'm going to use the pronouns he and him for God because it's just too foreign, and I don't want people to get hung up on a she or him or her or they. And after hearing the importance and seeing the importance, especially in Beer and Hymns, when we changed him to her and we were singing she for God as opposed to he, how that really resonated. And now when I look at my book, I think, I'm not going to cower to that. I mean, no, that needs, if I'm wanting to change things, that needs to get out there and become more common. So we women do see a higher power in a feminine form. That really, and I was like, oh my God, I've got so much editing to do now. And the other thing, speaking of irreverence, Danae, that you mentioned, the last night of Beer and Hymns, there was a lightning storm going on, like in the background. So every time they were playing the hymns, and it was irreverent, and I love irreverence. But one thing that really struck me, in fact, I want to get with Anna and have a show on this maybe the beginning of September, were the hymns. I really struggled with the lyrics in a lot of them. And I also was able to put together the quest for heaven as opposed to the zest for life. And that really struck me. I have been singing I'll Fly Away ever since, but it's all about, I can't wait to die so I can get to heaven. And that really put a lot of things into perspective for me that really kind of helped in some of the deconstruction some gaps that were missing for me. Not judging, the hymns have their thing, but cheering about dying and being covered in blood was so different to me now than it ever was. I mean, I literally was like, oh my God. To sing these things, and I grew up singing them, please wash me in the blood. And now I'm like, oh.
Sounds kind of weird, doesn't it?
It does.
So the ever elusive Cody and I led Beer and Hymns in Jacksonville here for about 3.5 years. And it was always in a secular space, usually a craft brewery or whatever. And I was pretty adamant most of the time, because we'd have a mixture of a crowd. We'd have a lot of people that like kind of bluegrass, blah, blah, blah. A lot of people that I sang there with my grandma. And then every now and then you get a few fundamental people that come in and think, I'm going to go sing some old gospel hymn. And I was pretty adamant that, hey, the theology in these songs is horrific.
Yeah.
And
they said that.
I'm going to mention that about every 10 or 12 minutes. That they're beautiful. They're beautiful melodies. They're beautiful, and they have history. You just have to kind of redeem them a little bit, maybe, and that's could be a good challenge, I think.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. For the longest time too, during Beer and Hymns, it's just sing what you're comfortable.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it just, like I said, it put pieces together that I couldn't put together. Like I said, I was saved in the evangelical church, did the altar call at 6. And I can't ever remember in my life having a zest for life. If you go, oh my God, I love life. In fact, there's a section in my book where I discovered that loving your life gets you the life to love. And my whole existence was waiting for the rapture, was waiting to die to go be with Jesus. My mom died mid-50s because she wanted to go be with Jesus. And seeing those hymns and singing them again, I was like, no wonder no wonder this is why, because like I said, everything was a quest for heaven as a zest for life. So my therapist is going to be very happy to hear this. But it really put things together for me. It was like, wow. So Greg, did you have any aha moments? What did you get out of the festival this year?
Probably the best part of the festival for me was William Barber being shaken again out of complacency and pushed into being that protester for all the right reasons. Work can be so draining and tiring, and right now, the work that I'm doing as an intentional interim ministry, there's so much to it. Not just your regular pastor work, but helping a church transition between settled pastors. It's a lot of work. So coming to a place like that, to a place like Wild Goose, reminds me that this is really what it's all about.
Yeah.
And so to be reminded again that, we got to call out this sin and really do that hard work. I mean, I'm going to have some rough words for the congregation when I get back this coming Sunday. It's going to be a Bible thumping they haven't experienced before, probably.
Church is built on trouble.
But, that's just what you got to do. You got to rattle the cages, rock the boat, and if somebody falls overboard, you can still throw them a lifeline. It's up to them if they want to grab it or not, and if they don't want to grab it, if they want to walk out, then it's always, give them the blessing of don't let the door hit you with the good Lord split you, and let them go. So it's the goose for me, and being shaken out of complacency. I know I always need it. I don't think I'll ever walk into a church and hear a pastor kind of have I don't want to say like a condescending or condemning tone, but I'll always receive it as, oh man, this is my work I got to do. So that's why when Reverend Barber said, hey, come on down, that was my own altar call. I know it was a call for social justice, but for me, that was the altar call that I was identifying with. I know some people in that evangelical world, an altar calls come and get saved. This was me going down to be saved for social justice.
Totally.
Yeah.
Danae, did you learn anything special this week or last week?
I guess yes, I did. I've been a deconstruction coach for a couple of years now, and specifically my work, as a ministry for many years, and specifically what I wanted to do when I decided to do deconstruction coaching was to be there for those who have left church. It's very similar work in a lot of ways. Sometimes it even still includes Bible study, but pastoring in a lot of ways, those who are no longer in church. And in my particular work, recognizing they may never go back to church and making safe space for that, for questions, for doubts, and things that maybe they don't feel safe going to church for. I have the last few months felt very drained and very uncertain about how long I wanted to do this work, how much it was going to change, or maybe eventually kind of fade away in my life. And you never know what the future holds. In fact, a big section of my session I talked about on Saturday was you have to make room for the seasons in your life, and what serves you now may not serve you in 6 months or 6 years. And so that could still be true, but this revitalized a lot of my passion for what I do, because it reminded me how many people need it. It reminded me how many people resonate with it. And I think I'll probably still change how I do my work some, so I don't get so drained, right? I want this to be sustainable for myself. I have been burned out in ministry more than once and would like to not be burned out from this. But the passion for the actual work, for people who are questioning and who are in the in-between and who maybe still want that relationship with God, but don't know, is there even such a thing as a church that aligns with me, and walking with them to figure that out. All of that, something I'm very passionate about. And I think I'd started to lose some of that passion over the last few months. So it's really nice to.
So it buoyed you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I must have said at least 20 times there's a song Living My Best Life. And one of my favorite lyrics of all time right now is I'm learning to eat the fruits that are in season. And I kept repeating it over the days. It was like that was almost like a theme that kept resonating with me and really focusing, going, okay, again, look what's before you, don't want, have it here.
Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah, that's good.
Tim, what about you? Did you learn anything new this time? Other than a horn?
Yeah. Well, and Danae kind of had 1 and 1A on it. So Jan and I, like I say, were fortunate to stumble upon the first ever Wild Goose. And, let's go see what's happening. And we spent the whole weekend crying like babies. Like, oh my God, we're not crazy. There's other people that feel this way, which is kind of Danae's like, I have people.
Yeah.
I'm not in this alone. I have people. And then, the next thing is the beautiful thing is, I think one of the reasons I try to invite so many people around or whatever, especially first timers, is because you get to experience that again through them. And Danae was there, and young Greg, I think, met Isaac, a young gay man he played beer and hymns with y'all.
Yeah.
He can't be more than early 20s, mid 20s. And he was singing all the beer and hymn songs without
Isaac?
Yes.
He's 32.
Well, I'm 62, so he's a young guy. Okay.
Baby face.
But nonetheless, at 32, he's kind of too young to know the songs to be old school hymn, unless, and he's sure enough, musical family, Assembly of God, parents are in denial that he's gay, and so the whole 9 yards. And he's there, and he's like, I had no idea that there would be people that would accept me and tell me I'm beautiful and tell me I can play in the band. And I'm like, so that's always my reward for being there and doing that is that somebody feels their way. It's like, I'm a child of God, no matter what people say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, at one point I said, God, there's so many tears here.
Yeah.
But they were happy tears. They were vulnerable tears.
Yeah.
And there was no judgment. And I literally said, this is the first festival I've ever been to where I could cry. And it's totally okay because of the beautiful nature, not sad tears, tears of action, tears of joy, tears of community. It was beautiful.
Yeah. And I also liked how a lot of people would handle that. Someone starts crying in a session or a workshop, and the person, up front would just go, you are safe here. We are making space for you.
Yeah.
And then just leaves it. And, someone next to them may not like hold on them or anything, but would just kind of like put their hands up like, I am literally holding space for you next to you without even touching you. Like, you do what you need to do. Don't let me interfere, but I am holding space for you right here. And I just saw that a few times and thought,
yeah,
that's what community is supposed to be. And actually a lot of my work is all about what is community supposed to look like? What was the church supposed to look like? And that was what a lot of my talk was about. And the goose is it. And what I love is in all of its goodness and beauty and imperfection, it is exactly that. It is safe community. And, there's a lot of us that have left churches looking for that. And
it's a place for growth. It's, like you said, I mean, there is no perfection. We all know we're completely screwed up. We know we have things to grow. We can look to our peers for advice and join their sessions and do all of that. But there was no condemnation for the emotion and the vulnerability and just encouraging, to live your best life.
Yeah. That's one of my major tenets for, like if you want to define safe community, that authenticity. And the ability to be authentic without fear, without shame, without guilt, without condemnation, all those things is one of the 5 major tenets in my personal definition of safe community. And the goose has it in spades. Yeah.
Okay, well, we are at the top of the hour already. Thank you so much for coming on and discussing the goose. Lord willing, I will be there next year, come hell or high water. But yes, I can't wait to spend more time with you guys next year and bring some more, something to help you like you guys helped me. Greg, where can people find you, and what are your final words for tonight?
People can find me in a couple different places on social media. On Instagram, I'm Space Force Chaplain. They can find me there. And then we also do have a Beer and Hymns Detroit Facebook page. I couldn't find the link to get it to you, but we do have that as well. And you can find myself and also one of your other guests that you've had on Fireside Creators too. Francis is there too. He was the guy that originated Detroit Beer and Hymns, and I just hopped on the bus. So it's a lot of fun. You can find me there, and also reach out at United Church of Big Rapids, where I currently serve right now as intentional interim, and I'd be happy to converse some more.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Danae, final words, and where can people find you?
Yeah. My final words are come to the Goose. Be there next year. Hear these stories and participate in the community next year, and figure out what this is all about. You can see my website at the bottom is deconstructioncoaching.com. And my Instagram is d.constructionist. So.
And last but definitely not least, Tim, any final words, and where can people find you?
I'm just a regular Facebook guy right now, so we're in a lull of the Beer and Hymns in Jacksonville's off right now. We do some different things. We've had Tooth will probably be here soon, not soon, sometime this coming year. We've had the Lady Duche's been in town with us with the Slippery Slope box. Beck Cranford, some of y'all may know Beck, I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
But we don't really have anything on the horizon right now, so just kind of laying low. I will be ramping up now with the Goose. I'm 100% Goose. I mean, I bleed the Goose. So, folks have need a place for a good demographic, of course, hit me up. I can get you a sponsorship there, partnership. And as we talk about churches and this and that, they discussed a little earlier, there's a little weirdness going on right now, a few things with the Goose that hasn't been handled perfectly. And you'll probably see all kind of crazy stuff, but let's talk about it. It's a good place. Good things happen there, and people are truly, I think, have best interests at heart. So,
well, I love that you see the perfection, honor it, and look for growth.
Yep.
That's what, in my opinion, makes the Goose so special, as opposed to some rigidity and this is the way we're doing it. I don't, care what you think. The openness, the vulnerability of everyone involved in the Goose, I really, really noticed.
My Goose email is tim@wildgoosefestival.org. Absolutely welcome suggestions, how we can be more inclusive, how, good, bad, or ugly. Please. Let's fix it. Let's fix it. If we missed the boat somewhere, let's fix it. I'm open. So thank you.
I look forward to helping you with next year's Goose.
I can't hardly wait. Hey, we'll all just bring inflatable pools. Jan wanted to bring inflatable pools this year, and it would be left now. So let's just put inflatable pools everywhere.
Yes.
I'll have one flown in.
Yeah. The dollar store across the road had them. So
perfect. I would have known. I would have got a bunch of them at that point.
Yeah, I'll just up their inventory in July, whatever it is.
Instead of falling back on Greg's couch, I would have fallen back into the lunch. Okay, well, I'm going to send you guys. Is there anything left to say? Does anyone have anyone left? Tim, kiss Jan for me. I love her so completely. Yeah. I will see each of you backstage, and I'm going to sign off the show.
Okay.
All right.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. The Wild Goose is an amazing festival, and I am so fortunate to have teamed up with such an amazing crowd. I had the best time, and these people are family to me now, so I love them, and I love the whole presence of it. I look forward to seeing continuing comments and questions in the Facebook and YouTube. If you have any questions or comments or your experiences and what you were taught and thought and all of that, keep in touch. Otherwise, I will see you next Tuesday. I can't even think what the show is. Tim just got in 30 minutes ago. It's still kind of crazy around here, but there is a show next week, so I can't wait to see you then. Be sure that no matter what you do, you walk in love this week. I'll see you soon. Bye.